Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Now, 4 years ago, I spoke with Todd Olson, millionaire, CEO and co-founder of software development platform called Pendo. And he was a man on a mission to elevate the world's experiences with software. And the serial entrepreneur teamed up with product leaders and technologists from everywhere from Red Hat, Cisco and Google to launch Pendo. I think it was October 2013. But fast forward to 2022, and Pendo has gone on to raise $356 million in venture capital, land more than 2,300 customers and employ 900 people across 7 offices around the globe. And Pendo has also gone on to land the Forbes Cloud 100 and Inc. Best Workplaces list for the 4th year in a row. But last time we never talked about his story and the story behind Pendo. So I've invited him back on the podcast to find out more about that story, what they've been doing during the last 4 years, and also explore their latest State of the Product Leadership Report. Today's podcast sponsor is Nextiva. Nextiva takes the hassle out of communicating with customers and your team. If you need to send a text, Nextiva One can do that. Need to send an important email? Nextiva One does that too. Need to start an internal chat with your meetings and phone calls? Yep, you got it. It's built right into Nextiva One. But the real game changer here is what Nextiva calls threaded conversations. Threaded conversations let you see an entire call and messaging history regardless of the tool that you use to communicate. So go to nextiva.com/techtalkdaily and you can start experiencing the simplicity that Nextiva One could bring to your business. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to North Carolina, where Todd Olson from Pendo is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome back to the show, Todd. 4 years have passed since we last spoke. So can you remind the listeners with a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. So I'm Todd Olson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pendo. Pendo is a cloud software company, and our application helps make other software applications better. And we do that by installing ourselves into those applications. We collect analytics on how users engage with that application so that the individuals building and responsible for it can understand how to improve it. And we also provide the ability to communicate with users in product to drive adoption, educate people on how to use it. Again, it's all about making the experience in software better.
Fantastic. And one question I didn't ask you last time you was on was ask you to share your origin story. Can you remember where your passion for tech came from and what that moment was that put you on this path?
Yeah, of course I remember. So I started programming at the age of 14 professionally. So for a bank, it's actually a credit card bank. And I kind of got hooked there. I think when you first discover that you have this ability to kind of come up with an idea or see a problem and then solve that problem through technology and automation, it's kind of addictive, and the more things I created, the more exciting it was. I mean, there's just some feeling of, fulfillment you get when you create something and it works, and the harder it is to create and the more you have to debug it and iterate on it and figure out a creative way to solve it. Honestly, the more rewarding it is when it works and everything feels good. I don't know. There's something about that process that, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I'll be honest, in my role today, I don't get to write software anymore, which makes me just a little bit sad, to be quite honest. Although I do love what I do, and I get a lot of joy from it as well. It's just a different type of joy than the joy I remember when I first kind of got hooked on technology, hooked on building and coding, and it's still awesome. So awesome.
And do you still like to roll your sleeves up when a problem comes along, or you just want to write a bit of code? Is that still in you, or have you just left that behind now?
I mean, I want to, I want to, just the rest of the team here won't let me do it anymore because it's probably like, I'm probably going to like break some rule or not follow some like compliance thing or, I think, we deal with significant amounts of data. We have lots of customers. We have large enterprise customers. I will tell you one story, which is kind of interesting. A few years ago, I got the itch. Like I really want to build something. And the only real time I have in my schedule that's a break where I don't have like, honestly, an entire week of meetings scheduled is the holidays, the period between Christmas and New Year's. So I got this idea that I was going to write code between Christmas and New Year's. So I asked the developers to like set me up with like the latest and greatest tools, like the documentation on how to do it. And I think a lot, especially the young ones, are like, there's no way this guy's going to be able to do this. Like, it's so painful. Like, it's the whole, like, they don't know how hard it is for us. And like, so I got all these rules, and I'll be honest, like, it was a little daunting. I was like, oh crap. Like, this is actually going to take some real work to, it took me like 3 days to get my environment set up to the point where I could code, in part because while I say I had no meetings, I probably did have meetings and was constantly getting interrupted. But lo and behold, I did get everything set up, and I actually did fix a bug over that holiday period. So I contributed just a fraction to Pendo's quality that week, but I proved to everyone that it was possible. And I think, I'm the kind of person, if you tell me I can't do something, like I will find a way to do it. And I don't care what personal injury it causes for me, like it will happen. So when I got the challenge from the developers, like I knew that I would find a way to do something, even if it was small.
And for any of your development team that are listening in November, is that itch need to be scratched again during the holidays? Or have you left that behind?
You know what? It probably does need to be scratched, but I don't know if I have in the cards this holiday. We'll see. That really is a more function if my wife lets me do it this holiday than anything else. I think at the time, I think we've got 3 more kids than we did then. So I think she may have different ideas for that period between Christmas and New Year's. I seem to recall her working that week. So I think both of us were working, which made it a little bit easier. But alas, I don't think that's going to be the case this year.
Yeah, I think the odds are stacked against you there. I'm curious, when we're talking about Pendo, was there a story behind the mission there and that, I don't know, belief and passion to elevate the world's experiences with software? Is there anything you can share around that and what put you on this journey?
Yeah, well, pain put me on this journey. So I led a product team prior to Pendo, and we kind of had our own homegrown system, which collected some of that data, and it was cool. I saw the power in it. However, every once in a while I'd ask questions, and the answer back from my team is, "Ooh, we don't have that," or "Yeah, like that part of the product we couldn't collect data from," or "Oh, no, we're missing this, and it'll take like a few months to get it." So that was one thing that was just frankly frustrating. And I was like, boy, it'd be really cool if we had all the data I wanted in a given time so I could make really good decisions, because the data I did have helped, but when it's incomplete, a lot less helpful. And the second thing I experienced is, as a software team, we started developing software more rapidly. And that's, of course, through agile development techniques and continuous deployment and cloud computing. We're shipping frequently, which, by the way, is awesome. I'm a big advocate of development teams shipping when it's ready. I know that actually could be controversial. I know some larger organizations, they don't do that, and I've had plenty of people argue with me about this. But I'm a big believer you don't hold code back. Yeah. Code's ready to go to the customers. Get it out there. Get it tested. Get it in people's hands. Big believer in that. However, if you're shipping frequently, it's hard for your users to keep up with all that change. And I would have customers call me and say, "Todd, slow down. Like, my customers or my users don't even know what you're shipping because you're shipping so frequently. And moreover, you get into this conundrum where customers don't even know your product does because there's so much change that they can't keep up with it. So I was like, okay, we got to figure out a way to communicate all this change with users better. So we started experimenting with putting little messages in the product, like, hey, this is new, check it out. But what I quickly learned is that if you're putting these messages in and they're not connected to any sort of data, you have no idea if like it's new to everyone, if it's new to some users. Like if you're telling a user who's seen it for 6 months, it's new, like, you know, it's like publishing a newspaper with 6-month-old news, right? Like that's not interesting. If anything, you start questioning the newspaper if you see 6-month-old news, right? So I came up with this idea, like, wow, wouldn't it be cool to combine like data, this information, whether someone's using something or not, with this ability to communicate with them, because you can personalize the experience. So for some people, that 6-month-old news, it'd be brand new to them, and that'd be okay. But for folks that it was 6 months old, they wouldn't see it. They'd see something new and fresh and different. And that's actually a really good experience. A good experience is one where it knows who you are, what you've done, what you haven't done, and it sort of directs you to the areas that I think is most relevant to you. And that was really the impetus for Pendo. I was like, I want to create that. Like that platform doesn't exist. Like, boy, I could really use it at this company. And it would be awesome to do it in a way that was also super easy to install and get up and running and not require a bunch of development time. So that was maybe a long-winded answer to your question, Neil, but that was how it all started.
Love that. And of course, fast forward to 2022, here we are with Pendo, and the world has changed so much in the last 4 years. And I wonder, can you tell me a little bit more about the growing product-led movement that's actually fueling the world's most successful software companies right now? Because a lot has changed, hasn't it, since we last spoke?
Yeah, I gave a talk recently where I was kind of reflecting on the start of the decade. And, you know, anytime someone starts a decade, and you know, you've seen this, we've all seen this, like everyone's trying to pontificate of what is this decade going to be about? I mean, everyone's looking back a little bit, you know, last 10 years, next 10 years. And of course, we're all doing this. And then 3 months later, the world shut down with COVID. But then, you know, like it's not over, or sort of over. I don't know. I was just in Japan last week, Neil, and I had to wear a mask almost every day of my life. So it didn't feel over. I can tell you that. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Kind of hard for me to judge right now. But I think the one thing that we have seen is all of this change has just accelerated people's adoption of digital technology and software. And what that means is that more and more of us have shifted the way we think of engaging with customers from a human-led movement to a more product or digital-led movement. And because we couldn't rely on human interaction for a few years, we've had to adjust the way we communicate with people. And that could be the way you engage with your healthcare provider, the way you engage with your bank, the way you engage with your insurance company. But by and large now, there's an app for everything. And that's been changed. That's been accelerated again for the last few years. And that's probably one of the most interesting movements and changes that we've seen that's honestly fueled, or, you know, a lot of Pendo's growth, is that all of the companies that exist need to find a way to have more product-led motions because, well, I guess for two reasons. One, it's what users expect now. They expect to have some sort of app, some sort of web presence, some sort of way to engage digitally. They don't want to have to talk to a human. Yeah. Sometimes we like it, but we don't want to have to do it. And the second piece is it's actually more efficient in many instances. And in today's economy, especially, like every company I speak with is trying to find a way to become more efficient as economies sort of contract. I think depending on where you are in the world, some global economies are in a recession, some are nearing a recession, some are questionably going to be headed towards one. But regardless, everyone's trying to find a way to be more efficient. And I think these motions help drive efficiency in economies where we can't just throw humans at problems anymore. So I think So yeah, that's what I've seen the last 4 years or so. But yeah, fascinating period. If you and I were talking back then and tried to predict this, we would have gotten it all wrong.
Yeah.
So that's what's cool. But look, we all have to adjust. We all have to that's part of the fun part of business, right? Is how do we adjust to all these changing times? So.
Yeah, 100% with you. And one of the reasons I was excited to get you back on the podcast was I was reading about your view that focusing on the end user is actually the key to more efficient growth and customer retention now, especially in this period of uncertainty. So can you expand on that?
Well, look, it all fundamentally comes down to is how do we make our end users or customers more successful? Yeah. I guess I'll broaden this and just a little bit. And there's two ways I think about end user. One is, of course, the customer. And, look, if the customers are able to efficiently execute, activities or engagements with your brand electronically or in a product-led way, then that is a very efficient way to service them. So there's no question that it's when things go bad. It's when the experience is wrong. It's where the end user can't get it, where they have to start making phone calls, or maybe they'll send an email, or maybe there's like a 6 exchange back and forth. Like that is not efficient, right? So you want to strive for areas where you're focusing on the end user getting results and getting positive outcomes, because when they don't get it, it causes more work and more pain for everyone. The second aspect of the end user that I think about is, as an employee, all of us are end users now. Especially in this hybrid world or work from home or wherever world we're in with respect to back to office. People work by opening up their laptops and spending all day long on a set of software applications. Now, that experience heavily impacts the efficiency of a business. Like if they can't get their work done because they can't figure out how to use some of the internal apps because they're misconfigured, or maybe they're really slow, or maybe there's some error in it, or it's confusing and the documentation's out of date, like that's enough to slow someone down for a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
And I kind of recently started using this expression where it's my belief that a lot of 30 or 40 years ago, we were seeking inefficiencies walking around factory floors. That was the whole lean movement, Toyota production systems, et cetera, led to a lot of the agile development techniques, a lot of inspiration there. Now, I believe that all these inefficiencies have shifted to software, bad experiences, people getting stuck, people trying to navigate or toggle between software applications and it's not quite right, or something, trying to copy and paste between them. Like that is where a lot of our inefficiencies lie. And that's kind of an area that we here at Pendo spent a lot more time on, is how do we help companies evaluate their internal software stack, what runs their business, and seeking to both measure and improve inefficiencies there. And I think that's a pretty powerful idea. And we have a lot of work to do as an industry there.
Absolutely. And of course, as we increasingly talk about the impacts of recession, etc., it could also arguably be a catalyst for innovation. And I also read that you were talking about how the product is the secret weapon for businesses during an economic downturn, due to its power in enabling businesses to do more with less. And there's so many businesses trying to do just that right now. So can you expand on that comment too?
Yeah. Look, I'll use us as an example.
Yeah.
And, when we entered COVID, I think it gave every company the ability to reset their plan. I remember walking into our executive planning session. I said, folks, the world has changed. Whatever plan we had coming into this year cannot be the plan for the rest of the year. That would be illogical. That'd be irresponsible to our investors to have the exact same plan. Like, the world's changed, the context changed. We have to adjust. And one of those adjustments we made was investing pretty heavily in our own product-led motions. We had flirted with the idea of a freemium product for years, but never really fully funded it, never really invested in it. It was always one of these side projects, afterthought sort of things. It was never like in the forefront, like a company-wide initiative. So we doubled down in COVID 2020 around launching a free version of Pendo. Now, you may be saying, oh my gosh, a tough economy, a lot of uncertainty, you're going to build something for free? But it was exactly what we did. And I will say, I was inspired a bit. I think many of us were seeking inspiration during that period. and we sought inspiration from other downturns. And I was reading a variety of stories, and I was reading a story about the 2008, 2009 downturn, and how it accelerated MailChimp's growth when MailChimp shifted to a freemium model. And I was like, wow, cool story. MailChimp, obviously rocket ship of a business. And that was one of the inspirations that I got. Then when I brought it back to our teams, I think we all aligned around, wow, this would be a good thing. Now, here's the thing. We launched free in November 2020. Fast forward to today, we actually have more free users of our product than paid. And freemium to paid conversions is actually becoming a very relevant part of our business. It's another way to engage with customers. And it's another way to meet customers where they are. And oh, by the way, it's super efficient. People just can come and sign up whenever they want. It just grows sort of organically and naturally. And now we're looking at ways to continue expanding on that product-led motion. We're adding in, self-service payment and looking at self-service renewal and self-service expand and just trying to continue building on this motion, in part because it's part of our product-led transformation. It's going to help drive ways to be more efficient, but not just more efficient. It's also going to help us engage with customers that we're not servicing well via our human-oriented go-to-market motions, like maybe companies in emerging markets like India, where we don't have humans or we aren't servicing, we don't have the right hours for them. Like now they can engage with Pendo completely self-service and have a great experience. So I think I'm excited by this because I think it's us kind of walking the walk a bit more, but it's also going to have, I think, a material impact on the future of our business. And it's a big investment long-term. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I think about that. So.
Awesome. And you also recently released your State of the Product Leadership Report, which traditionally explores trends impacting product management, the evolution of the product manager role, and how Europe is faring in terms of product-led digital transformation. And for anyone that's not seen that report, what were the big takeaways for you, would you say?
Look, I think one of the more interesting things is kind of like when you kind of compare on a country by country basis, it seemed that France was really leading Europe with respect to their interest in leveraging data for product decisions and also more openness to product-led techniques. So I think it's interesting that the French market feels a little ahead here of some of the other European markets, and that frankly just is a surprise based on how I would think about the continent, historically. But yeah, interesting insight.
And was there anything in there that surprised you? Because you're someone that lives and breathes this space, but I'm curious if there was anything there that took you by surprise. Yeah,
look, I just think that I think that's probably the biggest surprise for me is that France sort of led Europe, and that's something that I wasn't expecting.
And as you look back at your inspirational career, I mean, what is the biggest lessons that you'd say you'd learned for any of those startup founders that are listening to this podcast today, maybe at the very early stage of their careers? Any advice you'd pass on to someone at the very beginning?
Oh, geez, Neil.
It's a lot of pressure on that.
Hour-long podcast on advice is probably much. I'll go with one I've been thinking a lot about recently, which is I think it's really important for founders and entrepreneurs to have a growth mindset and instill a growth mindset into their business. I often find that, like, for all too often, founders have a scarcity mindset, which is, it's this whole concept that the world's a set of zero-sum games. And the reality is, like, it doesn't have to be. I constantly try to find ways to continue growing the pie, so to speak. And I mean, is like, I hear people say, well, I don't want to give up this percentage of the company, or I don't want to have a board, or I don't want to do this, or I want to maintain 100% ownership or maximum ownership. And what that does is, like, you're sacrificing the ability to get more people involved, and owning 100% of something small, it was different of owning a small percentage of something huge. And I guess I've always been more the mindset of, like, I want to grow the pie bigger. And I think it's really that growth mindset that continues to kind of drive us forward, because I kind of always want to grow things. I always want more. We're always looking for new markets, new expansions, new products. I just think it's really, really important when you're starting something from scratch to kind of approach it from that mindset.
Love that. And I'm curious, we started the podcast talking about your origin story here. And if I was to ask you to leave a book that maybe inspired you that we can add to our Amazon wish list, does anything spring to mind? And all I'll ask is, what book are you going to leave us with and why? Is there a story behind that choice?
I love the book Good to Great from Jim Collins. There's so many good nuggets in there. I think he blends quantitative data on actual business performance, but then really tries to distill it down to a series of like best practices, ideas on company culture and values. It's just a great leadership book, but it's rooted in data and in quantitative information. So like as like a numbers person, like I can geek out on like all the data he has behind it, but I come back to those principles like nearly every week of my life. And I think about them. So I think that's, to me, a book that's super inspirational.
Awesome. Well, I'll add that to our Amazon wish list. And for anyone listening that wants to find out more information about Pendo, maybe check out that State of the Product Leadership Report or contact your team. What's the best starting point for everything?
Look, our website, www.pendo.io. Always a great place. We're also at Pendo.io on Twitter. So feel free to check us out there. LinkedIn is also a great place. We're just Pendo on LinkedIn. So check us out. So we do have on our website, I guess, some amazing assets. We have an area called How I Pendo, which is actual stories from customers, how they use us. We have a product-led microsite. That's pendo.io/product-led. There's just some great places, great resources there. Folks should check it out.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on the podcast. Although 4 years have passed since we last spoke and the world has changed dramatically since then, you're still a man on a mission to elevate the world's experiences with software. So I applaud you for that. I'll be interested to see how you get on over the holiday season. So we'll have to get you back on next year and not wait another 4 years. But thanks for joining me today, Todd.
Sounds good, Neil. Have a good one.
It's always a pleasure to have Todd on the podcast, and I just love how I was able to regroup there, find out more about the story and the phenomenal success that they've achieved over the last 4 years since we last spoke, especially considering the economic climate and everything that every single person's been through. So kudos to Todd, and a big thank you for agreeing to come back on here and join me. But over to you. If you've got a story you'd like to share, you know the drill by now. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, @Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Now, I will return again tomorrow with another guest, but a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.